Welcome to the One Shot Effect podcast. This is episode 14 with Kyle. Welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks so much for your time.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, so who is Kyle? Maybe that's a good first question.
I mean, that's a big question. Um, yeah, I guess I can just speak from where I'm at now. Um, yeah, I kind of make YouTube videos uh, on a mix of topics, mostly around like uh, helping people deal with chronic illness, but then also like spiritual stuff around meditation and kind of this awakening path of kind of going deeper into the truth of who you are, finding more authentic ways to express and live. And nowadays, I just kind of use the channel to like it's interesting, just as we were talking about before we started recording, like ways that your content shifts. And I guess my approach is just like whatever feels authentic that I want to share. um, and then yeah, just like I like to travel as well, so I just got back from like 2 months in Europe and just been enjoying like exploring and kind of yeah, just very much living day to day. Like trusting life and seeing what unfolds, basically. Yeah.
Has it always been that way? How old are you? Is this another good question? But like, yeah, what's been your
Yeah.
journey with intuition over the years? Have you always listened to that
Mm,
voice? Have you tried to plan far ahead? And yeah.
mm. That's a great question. I love that. It's definitely not always been that way. So that's the interesting thing, I guess. Like for me, this whole shift in the way of living, more focused on intuition and trust, as opposed to like planning and like think overthinking, happened kind of around 2020. I got COVID, and that was like a period of massive shifting in my life. So that's one of the things that um, I talk a lot about on the YouTube channel, is kind of this deep stuff that I had to work through, basically because I got COVID, and then that turned into like long COVID, which kind of turned into this pretty intense like chronic fatigue syndrome thing, where I was kind of just changed my whole life, really like shifted me out of the world that I was living in. Basically, I was studying economics at UCT in Cape Town, and I was in a relationship, and that's what looked like where my life was going. And then I got sick, and I got sicker and sicker and sicker, and eventually I like dropped out of university, and then just made my whole world just became like how to kind of fix my health, basically. And then that took me on this whole like journey, which eventually led into like a very spiritual journey about kind of finding out um like who who's at the roots of this kind of experience of me. um, and that's what opened me up to this completely different way of living, whereas like as I started to heal from the symptoms of the long COVID and the chronic fatigue, it happened alongside this like this more kind of integration with life, like in a spiritual way. You'd like more trusting um, things beyond me and all of that. So yeah, that was like a big part of this whole shifting for me. Yeah.
And I mean, it's like so many people are like, oh, they're gonna get the awakening through the meditation, the yoga, but sometimes it's through the tragedy.
Absolutely, man. Like honestly, it was the it's funny. It's like I stumbled into like awakening stuff after um, so much had shifted through like the health and the crisis and the tragedy stuff, and that's when I started to realize how powerful all of that had been. Where it was like it just stripped away like ego and identity. Where I was, and and then I started to get interested in like deeper awakening stuff, and I was like, oh fuck, I'm in the perfect place. I was like, life is kind of done half the job already. I had to do so much letting go, so much surrender, without even knowing what was going on. It was, and there's some teachers that I found really helpful along the way, and one of them would always say like, disruption is such a catalyst for awakening, and that was definitely the case for me.
Disruption is a catalyst, or disruption is a?
Yeah, disruption is a catalyst for awakening. So, like, if we look at things from the perspective of the mind that's trying to plan everything, it looks like tragedy and disruption is like running everything, but it's really kind of breaking down that that one who's trying to control everything, and then opens up the space for um, like a deeper letting go into a different way of living, I would say. Yeah.
Facts. Yeah, that is so true, man.
Yeah.
Disruption is a catalyst. Yeah, I mean there is a lot of catalysts, I guess, hey? But I mean, yeah, that reshifting of priorities that can happen when your routine is shifted. I think it's so important that we are in touch with our bodies, but also like in touch with
Mm.
how our actions are like impacting our bodies and our minds. Like for
Yeah.
me, it's
Yeah.
like how I feel today is pretty much like what have I been doing the last 3 days? What have I been eating the last 3 days? And it's like
Mm.
you have to be like really in touch with your body. I mean, but it's that's a
Yeah.
journey. But I think what helps with that is like questioning. Life's a long experiment of like, is this working for me? Is it not?
Mm. Mm.
But what's your advice on like how do you make sure you're not going down the wrong path, or like how do we catch
Yeah.
ourselves sooner, right? In an unhealthy choice that we might not even realize is unhealthy because
Mm.
we're just not present. Or any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think what you said around the body is and feeling into the body, for me, that's kind of the key to realizing when you're going down a path that's not right for you, or it's not authentic, or if you look at putting your energy in the places that are going to serve you best. For me, it's so clear nowadays when I'm kind of getting caught up in other people's plans, or whatever. I feel it in my body. I can just feel. I mean, that's why I would say like the whole illness fatigue thing was such a um, great learning tool for me with all of the authenticity, because it was like all these symptoms that I was experiencing in my body were like they were my guides, if that makes sense. So like first it forced me to practice a lot of meditation, which I think is a really helpful key as well, is to kind of um, get more in touch with what, because I think for most people, like if I look back at myself like 3 or 4 years ago, if somebody had told me like get in touch with your
The
body, if
busy
you're so
drug.
yeah, if you're so in the mind, you don't even know what's going on in the body. So I think feeling into the body through like practices like meditation, and then your body can be your guide for um, why are you feeling so drained, why are you feeling like this and that, and then kind of that can be an indicator for having, like you said, then having a look at what have I been doing for the last week, or like reassessing. That's been the thing for me. Like I've had periods where I like go back into like an uncomfortable state with my health, and then it forces me to reflect and be like, oh yeah, cut that out, put a little bit more attention here, slow down with that, spend more time in nature, just kind of reminding myself of these things. Yeah.
Have you found like there's different like times where you like need more nature or more different things? And
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
what's your relationship to nature as well?
Yeah, I love that. It's nature. I love it, man. It's so, I feel it's so good for just slowing us down, kind of getting us more in touch with, um, yeah, like relaxing the nervous system, heating the nervous system, but then also getting in touch with like, I guess my experience of nature has shifted as the kind of awakening process has gone deeper, whereas now things feel very there's like layers to it which I wouldn't have seen before. In the past, I would have just been in nature and be like, "Oh yeah, I feel very calm. This is quite nice." Whereas now it's like you can sense the powerful energy of certain places. If I like go by the ocean or Table Mountain or something like that, and it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like there's so much there. And I can definitely feel like that was lovely with being in Kruger now. The difference of like for me, I think I'm quite sensitive to um, I think a lot of people are, but I've noticed this myself. I'm very sensitive to other people's energy, to kind of the energy around me. So when I'm in the city, like I often stay in the heart of Cape Town, it's things feel tense, contracted. I'm up in my head a lot more. And then I get out like onto Table Mountain, or recently when I was in Kruger, and it's just like, it opens up this space, and it's like, yeah, I think everybody having a bit of quality time with nature is like such a
I
helpful
mean, I
thing.
completely relate to you there. Like a great
Yeah,
example is like I record videos just like you, and I struggle to record at home.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I struggle to record like when I'm not in nature, but it's only like then I feel inspired. It's like that fills my cup to the point where I'm like, wow, my cup's overflowing. Like, wow, I want to take a photo. I want to
Mm-hmm.
take a video because it's so beautiful. I want to share it, and that's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. But then it's also like being present and like not being on the phone, and then it's also
Yeah, yeah,
like,
exactly.
so oh, it's like inspiring to record. Then it's just like a beautiful like location, and I think there's also like for
Yeah.
me with recording, it can be like such an excuse of like, oh, I don't have like a production team, like as if that's what you
Yeah, yeah.
need. Like that's not at all. But these excuses that we make for ourselves, it's like anyone
Yeah.
could start a podcast. You literally just need a voice memo, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a podcast,
Yeah.
like there's people that overcomplicate everything and they postpone it, and it's like this imposter syndrome. It's just like, oh yeah, 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 I'm just gonna work this job, and then when I can afford that, then I'll take it seriously. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like the balance of like hobbies and work. And I mean, yeah, I'd be curious, like, what's been your journey of hobbies and work?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. I wanted to say, like, I like what you said about the nature. It is a funny like balance of like being in nature and wanting to just like really absorb it and be present, but at the same time, it is so beautiful to want to share it as well. You know, like so I totally
And I
relate to
think for
that.
me,
Where I'm
it's
off.
always like this eerie feeling of like, why is it so empty? Like, why is this not jam packed? Everyone should want to
Yeah.
be there here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Everyone's missing out. Yeah. But yeah, hobbies and work. Um, yeah, I guess that was what like the whole chronic illness phase was very helpful for, was kind of cutting out uh, things in my life that like just didn't. So like I was working as a kite surfing instructor in the past and studying, and you know using a lot of my time in things that was like made sense, but it wasn't like the most inspiring things that I wanted to be doing with my time. And then uh, like I had this whole pause in my life when I got so sick, where I was just like on my own meditating like hours a day and just like doing that. And then when I came out of that, because like my nervous system started to heal and I was able to do things more again, then I would go just spend time in nature. And it was just kind of doing the things that like I wanted to do basically. And then after that, it was more of like an integration phase again. And that's been like the last few years, which was quite interesting, was to see, okay, like trying certain jobs again, seeing like what aligns, what doesn't. And then that's actually often been an inspiration to put more effort and energy into that, kind of like you said, like making things work, like a podcast, like a YouTube channel, like this or that. Like I've worked as a kitesurfing instructor again, and it was nice for a while, but then I was like, okay, at the end of that season, I was like, I'm going to put a lot more attention and energy into like the YouTube channel, because that I really, uh, you know, enjoy. I'm more passionate about it. So I guess the way I look at things nowadays is like, obviously there's practical things to consider now and then, but I think for a guideline for me is just to kind of follow like what feels passionate and inspiring, you know, like what's exciting, what's like, yeah, what do I actually want to do? Not what's safe, what's makes sense, what is like gonna, you know, be a good story to make everybody around me happy. But it comes with its challenges. Like that's been the thing that I'm often working through, is that for me it's a lot about living in the unknown, you know, where it's like you just don't know exactly where things are going to go. Uh, but there's a beauty to that as well. It triggers all the fears, I think, the limiting beliefs, these kind of things that would kind of hold you back. And then like more going into the unknown, it brings these things up, you release them, and then there's a certain beauty to the unknown as well, I find.
yeah, it's tricky because we as humans, we think we want what we want, but we can
Mm,
only perceive what we want with what we have. But it's only that
yeah,
we get what we want that then we can see where that goes. Like you can only peek
yeah,
around one corner at a time.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
a nice way to put it. Um, but it's really like, and then it's gone. Like the thought's gone.
But I agree with you there. Like that's for me, like direct experience is always the best teacher, because it's like and this is for me where authenticity is so powerful as well, is to kind of just follow what my mind is saying that it wants, for me to see whether that's really what I want or not. Like whether that's a certain like work or relationship or this or that. Like I love, and this was a teacher like made this clear for me in the past, which was really helpful. Was like, don't just kind of uh, pretend that you want things that you don't want. Like, what do you actually want, even if it doesn't seem the most authentic? Because that's how you'll learn what you really want. And that's been so true for me. It's like, okay, like I'll go work this job, and then after that I'm like, oh shit, okay, that's how I realize that that's not what I want to do. Like kind of like you said, where you don't know until you get there, and then you see that kind of pushes you in a different direction or whatever. So like direct experience, because that's another thing that you were saying, like how we think as humans. It's always like we want to plan everything and know everything of like, okay, this is how it's going to play out, that's how it's going to play out. But for me, just like diving in, kind of throwing yourself into like the actual life experiences will always kind of just teach you more than like whatever we can think of in the future, or like from reading books or whatever. Like obviously they two go hand in hand, but so much can be gained from just making mistakes, fucking up, succeeding, whatever.
And I think it's often even just like the people that we meet along the way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for me, it's like sometimes I'm like, why did I have to meet that person? But it's like, oh, then through that person I met this person. Or yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
what's been like the importance of mentors, and like what would be your advice to someone who maybe like
Mm,
doesn't know how to get started, like how, because I think that's what's really missing in today's society is
mm,
mentorship.
mm.
And bigger
That's
than that,
yeah.
eldership, because in our societies the elderly and the youth are far too distanced, I believe.
Mm,
I think that
mm,
retirement homes should be next to schools.
mm.
Like the people that have time to take care of kids and share wisdom, and the people with wisdom should like be
Yeah, yeah,
interacting, and like that's why grandparents is one of the most amazing things. But not everybody
yeah,
has
yeah,
grandkids, and not everybody has grandparents. I don't know. I
yeah,
just feel like there has to be something that could be done there. But anyway, yeah. What's your thoughts on mentorship, and how
yeah,
would
yeah.
you
That's a great.
recommend someone to carry that
Yeah,
journey of
yeah.
mentorship, and is it important?
Yeah, and mentorship has been huge for me, and I think that's one of the beautiful things with the internet and technology nowadays is there's access to so many great teachers and mentors that it might not even be like a one-on-one. It wasn't for me. I can reflect back, and I'll mention some of their names now, but I can reflect back on all the most transformational periods in my life, and it was really at each stage there was certain mentors for me, even if I wasn't interacting with them uh, kind of directly. So one of the clearest, or one of the first mentors for me, kind of going down a more spiritual awakening path, was Sam Harris. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a yeah, he's a like a neuroscience kind of author, and but he integrates like neuroscience, spirituality, meditation. Anyways, at the time it was great because it was like opening up my mind, which was very focused on intellect and um, kind of wanting to know everything, know life from an intellectual perspective. And then this was kind of opening me up to more studying uh, experience through meditation and consciousness and like that. And I think mentorship is so, or like that kind of mentor was just somebody online. Like I downloaded this app, and uh, there was like guided meditations and a lot through there. And it was like somebody who'd gone on their own kind of spiritual path, realized all these things. And I remember reflecting back on it one day, like how much my life had changed. Like after like 6 months of maybe meditation, my life had changed so much. And I was like, wow, I would never have kind of had all these shifts if this guy Sam Harris had never gone on his own spiritual path and done all of his stuff. Like it's just like, so I think it's so powerful mentorship. Like I wouldn't have had those shifts on my own, and there is so much uh access to these kind of things with technology, with YouTube channels. And then somebody else after that was this guy. His name's Angelo DeLulo. He's got his focus is very much on like the awakening path and kind of going deeper into that. And man, his stuff was like life changing for me. His because it really this is the beautiful thing that I find with mentors is like the right people show up exactly when you're ready for them. It's like you can't really. You often see it more in retrospect. Like it maybe doesn't feel like
I
that at the
mean,
time.
that
Like
even makes me think of like school, like how many books probably go over kids' heads, and they're like, "Oh, I
yeah,
don't want to read this. I'm being forced to read this," and then like in 10, 20 years, you're like, "Damn, they gave me a classic."
yeah, exactly. And you can't force it on someone. If like there's this beautiful timing to things where you'll only be interested in a book when you're interested in it, and like before that you can't be. And that was kind of the exactly how these like mentors kind of showed up in my life as well. Was like so this next guy, Angelo, I was kind of scouring the web, like listening to all these kind of different spiritual teachers and stuff, and I just came across his book somewhere recommended by somebody and I started reading it, and it's like that book absolutely changed my life, like probably one of the biggest books that's ever changed my life. And it was such a like random kind of uh like way that I found it was like through a link on a Reddit page on like somewhere on the internet, and then his work was like so uh transformational for me for so long. And he just I can looking back in hindsight, it was like, yeah, that was the right mentor for me at that time. Yeah,
Dude, I think there's so much value in choosing good mentors. Like, if to anyone who's listening to this podcast, find yourself some good mentors. You know, they say you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, but it doesn't necessarily have to be physical people around you. It's really the information
yeah,
that you're feeding your brain, the vibrations. So if you're listening to this, choose good mentors. You know, if your friends aren't giving you that fix, if you still feeling empty, you still have capacity to be filled, right? It's about filling that cup, and it's about finding what fills your cup. And it's we spoke about it earlier. Like you got to find that taste. You got to develop that taste. You got
mm,
to try things. You got to go into that unknown. I think
yeah,
in that unknown, you can stumble upon the
yeah,
gold.
yeah. And I think like along what you're saying there, good point. If I just reflect back on my own path, for making space for like good mentors is being willing to kind of let go of like friendships or relationships that kind of holding you back in a way that like that was key for me. It was like I look at all these times when I like met these new or came across these new people that were like so helpful for me on my path. It was only because I was really willing, and like people can come back into your life in different ways later on. But I think there is really uh, it obviously is personal tendencies, but this was something that I noticed always a tendency was to kind of give my energy too much to people that just you kind of past that, like all relationships serve you for a while, but like being willing to see like when is somebody you're just not on that same frequency or vibration anymore, and then it's like staying in that out of like nostalgia or yeah, just like fear of letting go. But that I think is the other side of like making space for mentors is kind of like you said, like the people you spend time with, like are they actually uh are you on the same page? Are you like learning from each
Are they
other?
speaking life into your life?
Yes, exactly. Like do you actually get energy from being with them? I think that's for me is such a like is it draining or is it inspiring like to hang out with them? Like it's quite simple. And going back to what we were saying earlier, your body is a great indicator for that. It is for me. Like I can feel socializing. Sometimes socializing is great, and sometimes it's just exhausting. And then it's a lot to kind of do depending on the people. What's that?
Bro, it is the most amazing like sleep elixir. We got like lavender definitely and 2 other like really nice sleep essential oils. I've been getting into like essential oils, bro. This
Oh
stuff
yeah,
is so good, bro. Like the
does it
effects
work?
of smells on like the brain and just like humans and like think of how many smells we used to interact with in the
Yeah,
bush.
yeah, yeah,
How like where do you think all the perfumes of the world came from? Like where do you think the original smells of perfumes came from? Like I mean I know
yeah.
you know like you spend a lot of time in nature, but like There's something so powerful about the smells, right? And like
Yeah,
all
and
of our
it's
senses that we need to be aware of,
yeah.
and that's what meditation really is, right?
Yeah, no, it's true, and I think smell is something that's like if you look at, especially like in cities or like the modern worlds we find ourselves in, like on technology and stuff. Like smell is something that does kind of just get
Bro,
completely
think
left
about
out.
COVID. Oh my,
Yeah,
all that
mm,
alcohol spending. Oh, bro.
yeah, yeah,
Like most, yeah, exactly. Cities start to smell like hospitals.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. It's interesting. When I was traveling recently, I went to it was in France. It was this little town called Grasse, and it's like one of the original towns where, um, like one of the most historical perfume sites, and they had this museum there that was all based on like perfumes. And it just came to mind. You're talking about like the origins of perfumes, and it was actually really cool because now you're going through this museum, and the whole experience is based on like going up and smelling this, going up and smelling that, and it was like it also made me realize how much the sense of smell is often neglected. You know, you're going out, you're looking, you're listening, you know, you're watching a movie, you're focused on the sounds and the visual info, but your kind
They
of sense
need
of smell.
smells in movies, bro.
Exactly. Yeah, it could be a little bit. Let's see how that goes. But I like that
I
idea.
mean, they got like the water spraying on people sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And the like IMAX and stuff. So smells probably next.
Wow, yeah, dude. I mean, now you've got me like a good question that I think I can ask for like more podcasts, but it's like memorable smells throughout your life. I mean, you kind of just shared a good story there. What was that place called
Yeah.
again, and where was it?
So the place was called Grasse, the town. It was in the south of France. So I was in Nice for like a week, well, not even a week. I was watching the end of the Tour de France in Nice, and then I was looking where to go next. And literally, like 50 kilometers from Nice was this like little town in the mountains called Grasse. And then when I was there, I was like, "What's?" It kept on popping up everywhere. They were like, "The main thing here is the perfume museum." So I went there, and I was like, "Damn, that's." Not like your everyday museum experience. Yeah, that's cool.
Have you ever been to the Kirstenbosch Smell Garden? So in Kirstenbosch, there's a certain section with all like the smelly leaves and plants. You could just walk through there, and it's
Oh,
like that,
really?
but from plants.
Yeah, yeah.
If you ever go to
That
Kirstenbosch, definitely go there.
that's yeah. I've been to Kirstenbosch like once, but I haven't because
It's
I'm more
time to
staying
go
on the other
back,
side of the
brother.
mountain. But I
Time to go
do I
back.
want to go that side. Yeah,
Nice. Now we can talk about that. Maybe we even go together someday. Do a little hike.
yeah, that'd be cool. So what's been your? I'm curious. Like, what's been your like story?
Yeah.
What's like what's gotten you like more into this kind of authentic intuitive way of living?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about finding that spark, finding that will to live is one way to put it. But I think, like for me, I don't know. I feel like every action that we take is either out of self-love or self-hate in a way. But it's really, it's
Mm,
like everything we do is either getting us towards what we want or further away, I guess. But
yeah.
yeah, so when I was like 17 years old, I dropped out of high school. I was just, like really depressed.
Okay.
I had like quite a traumatic childhood in some ways that I think just had a lot of unprocessed things that it's only when I was like 17 I was like, why am I depressed? This is coming out of
Mm,
nowhere. But I feel like,
mm,
it's like repressed stuff. And
yeah.
school
Yeah.
is school is a quite is a traumatic experience. I think it
Yeah.
can be. Like, I
Yeah. I
don't
mean,
think
it
it's
was
for
for me. I
everyone,
think.
and I think every school is different, and every person is different, and every grade is different. So, I mean, like, you can
Yeah.
really have an infinite amount of different experiences, and it's what you
Yeah.
make of
True.
it. But then it's like, for me, it's like, oh, I dropped out of school in halfway through grade 11, and it's like, well, school's gone, but I'm still feeling depressed. I'm still struggling. So it's like, it's not the school that's the problem, but it's like,
Yeah.
if maybe there is an underlying problem, it might not help. But I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I just
Yeah.
find maybe
True.
I was at that school I was at was like a bigger school, so I think it's easy for kids to kind of get lost in the system, or it's like
Yeah.
it was kind of a school like, oh, if you're doing well, here's awards, but if you're not doing well, like rather
Mm,
leave, and then like we can keep our like pass rates and stuff.
mm,
which is like,
I think a lot of schools are like
that's so
that.
messed
Like,
up.
yeah, the average school. Wait, so what did you do then when you dropped out of school?
Yeah, so that's when I was like really like properly starting my like entrepreneurial journey. Like I've always had the vision of like a digital marketing business. That was like my first business.
Okay.
So I was like starting it then. It's a lot harder to start a business than you think, especially if you're 17 years old.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, yeah. So that was kind of when my journey of like, yeah, it's time to choose me a little bit, bro. Like it's time to like
Nice. Yeah, yeah.
take care of myself, you know. And that was like a journey. But I mean, yeah, it's basically it was like 2 years where I gained like 45 kilograms. So it was like this complete
Okay.
ego death in a way, but also like I was
Mm.
like, well, drugs are bad, but food is fine. No, caffeine is chill. These are so normalized. There's nothing wrong with food, bro. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the culture that I was like around. Of like,
Mm.
no one would say anything. I was like literally like sick, you know. In some
Mm.
ways, I
Mm.
was like really depressed and like I don't know, bro. It's like such a compounding thing, especially like obesity and just like
Yeah.
unhealthiness. It's like the more unhealthy you get, the more worse you feel. So it's like, but it's like really
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
out of touchness with your body that you're like so
Yeah.
deep struggling with something else that like you I don't know, and it's just this
Yeah.
numbing desire. It's a really a tricky journey, but through that journey so I gained the weight in 2 years, lost the weight in 2 years, 45 kilograms, 45 kilograms. So 90 kilograms change in weight in like 4 years. That's a
Wow.
lot of trauma for the body and for the
Yeah.
mind and the ego death and the like, how do people treat you differently when you gain 45 kilograms? How do people treat you differently when you lose 45 kilograms?
Yeah.
And it's even a
Yeah.
journey of like natural with most weight loss journeys is people often overshoot their goal and then like correct kind of thing. It's like motivated, 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 and eventually like you reach a goal and then is the motivation gonna slip? I guess that's the question.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's why it's also you got to be careful. What is your goal? You know, with fitness or whatever,
Yeah.
or with gymming. You know, I mean, people literally injure themselves in the gym all the time. I'm like, well, bro, why? But
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. You know, just I think it's
Yeah.
just yeah.
That's
You got to really understand your goal. Like, is it stronger, 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 or is it healthy, healthy, healthy? Like,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's
And also
power
you have to
lifters.
like
That's also true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But that's fascinating. What your like kind of weight loss and gain journey. It's
And then
interesting. It's
throughout
quite
that, there's like a meditation journey as well. I'm quite a big
okay.
fan of the
Yeah.
Art of Living. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I've have what is it though? Like
It's like a breathing meditation non-profit, like worldwide, but they're also
okay,
based in South Africa. And
okay.
I
So that
did
was like
their.
your
They have a
introduction.
course called the Happiness Program. Like at
Okay.
one of my lowest moments in my life, my dad actually like went with me to one of these meditation courses, I guess. And yeah, I had this pretty amazing, vivid experience of like, I'm like doing the meditation. One of them is like, we
Okay.
got like kind of these ones as well, like, just so you can kind of understand. But yeah, one day
Yeah.
I should
Yeah.
teach you that technique. It's a cool technique, bro. It's quite, there's a few steps.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, highly recommend The Art of Living to anyone watching. They're worldwide. Check it out. And yeah, I had this vivid experience of like doing. So they call it the Seduction Kriya, is like one of the main breathing like techniques, and it is like it's very transcendental. It's very unreal meditation experience. It's very different to like when I meditate at home. So there's a group
Yeah.
element
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
feel
it
that as
keeps you
well. I've
focused. It's like you
yeah.
know what I mean, like you're breathing in sync with other people. It keeps your mind
Yeah.
going, keeps the breathing going and flowing. It's a beautiful thing. So there's definitely a group element to it, but yeah, it's just yeah, Seduction Kriya must do in life for everyone watching. Like that's a crazy thing. Like so many people like bucket lists is like go to the Eiffel Tower. It's like or whatever it might be, but it's really just understanding what are your things. But I think how many other like experiences that can we even experience like right here? Like that, how
Yeah.
many things do we want to experience? We don't even need to go somewhere else physically. We maybe want to go
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
spiritually, mentally. But like these are all. places and experiences we want to have. And I think it's important to understand all of the different experiences life has to offer. It's like a menu that you didn't even know existed. It's like that when you're at a restaurant, sometimes there's that extra thing that's not on the menu that you have to like
Yeah,
speak to the waiter and be like, hey, you know, oh, we just added this. We just didn't put it on the menu yet. Or whatever the case may be. But I think
yeah,
that's really what spirituality is like. It's peeking behind the curtain, you know?
yeah, for sure. But and I think it's kind of, I think we could both say this from our experiences, like what you're saying about how we have these kind of standard dreams of like, oh, I want to go see the Eiffel Tower. I'm going to do like all these normal kind of the consensus human experiences, and then it's like, this was the case for me, that like the whole kind of health crisis was what completely shifted my focus on like what was actually, yeah, got me in touch with like what I actually want to explore in my being. Like I wouldn't have kind of gone down that path if it wasn't for that. And it sounds like it was similar with for you with like the whole like the weight gain and loss. And it's interesting. It's a very similar, like the whole downward spiral thing is the same for me with the whole thing. Like it all comes back to the mind for me. Like how living in our heads and our like small kind of little perspective of reality, I think for different people it'll play out as all these kind of different uh destructive or like unhealthy ways of living, you know. Yeah, because that was the same for me. It was like it was this physical illness, but at the same time it all started to change like once my mind got in a healthier space, and then my body could actually start to heal itself. It's like, yeah. So what, I'm curious, what for you like was like a shift out of the like the turning point, or like into like a
Yeah, this is
more
such a
healthier
common
approach?
question, bro. uh, I mean, I
Was
think,
there any particular shift or
I think always a more important question is like, people are like, oh, how'd you lose the weight? Like, a more important question is like, how and like, why did you gain the weight? So, like, to solve
mm,
gaining weight, you need to like, why did you start gaining in the first place? Solve that thing, and then, you know what I mean? But it's like
right,
solving the
yeah,
symptoms or the cause, right?
yeah, that's true. That's was my experience as well, was like get to the root. And what was interesting what you said about like repressed emotional stuff, like that was what was the key, is like this, my nervous system was completely screwed up by COVID and a mix of other things, and then this was leading to all these physical symptoms in my body. But when I shifted from like focusing on each little physical symptom to more like, okay, we need to completely kind of do some deep like root work here, and that's like was the stuff that actually works, as opposed to like, what is this symptom doing, what is that symptom doing. So yeah, I think it's the same.
Yeah, what has been your health journey? Like, what has been your. I mean, one of my favorite questions to like ask myself is like, what's my healthiest habit? What's my unhealthiest habit?
Mm,
Being aware of like, what am I doing to this vessel, this temple,
mm.
the body?
Yeah, I guess my healthiest habit is definitely for me meditation. Like ever since I started meditating, and then like it became a huge part of my life. It's such, I can feel when I stray from that, if I like, and I feel like life just has natural fluctuations. So for me, there's times when I'm busier and it's more about like integrating and doing things around other people, like specifically when I'm traveling and just meeting new people and kind of staying in other people's spaces. It's difficult, but I can definitely feel the effect on the body if I don't have this kind of stillness to just come and sit in and drop into. Um, and then I do, and then my body tells me that. Like that was recently after I was traveling a lot. I was like, okay, I just need to meditate a lot more. And then it was like, what a beautiful thing to have access to, which I never did in the past.
It's all
Nature,
about
like we're talking about,
tools.
yeah, exactly. That tool, nature, is like goes hand in hand with that for me. Like just spending more time in nature. My unhealthiest, um, I would say probably related to uh like unconscious or like use of technology in certain ways. I felt like that was always the kind of most like harmful or like waste of my energy and my time, and like would get me into these like kind of stuck states was if when I would just like kind of get sucked into like mindlessly using my phone or the internet. Even when I was struggling with my health journey, like it was seeing the effects, like when I was doing all this research on these like really toxic negative places where people were just like talking about chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID and just like dumping all of their despair. And then you just kind of suck that all in. And it was like, there were a couple of times in my life where like a big shift was realizing how like unhealthy that was, that like kind of using technology in this ways was literally making me worse, you know. So I'd say that's probably like being willing to, and people as well, like, you know, anything that's an energy drain, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. What's been your like journey with meditation? Like, how did you first learn of meditation? And like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many
So
different forms of meditation. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I started meditation. um when was it? It was like end of 2021, I think. And what got me interested in meditation was I was struggling with these like chronic fatigue, long COVID symptoms, and I was doing all this research online, and I tried supplements, I tried doctors, I tried medication, and nothing was helping. And then I saw some people online saying meditation had helped to like calm their nervous system and uh, reduce their symptoms. And that was when I started like my first interest in meditation. And then this goes back to the first mentor I was talking about. So I was doing a little bit of meditation on my own, but I wanted to like make it more of a habit. So I was looking at different meditation apps, and there's the Headspace app, which I think most people know about. It's like the main one. And I used that for a bit, but then I ran out of the free trial, and then I found this other app called Waking Up, and this is Sam Harris's app, and it's
Yeah, I
what
know that
like
app,
what
bro.
you know Waking Up. Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna share my experience after you, but yeah, you go, bro.
okay, cool.
I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
cool.
also remember, bro. Like, I'm trying to take notes, like what you're saying, because it's making me think of things.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm keen to hear your side as well. But yeah, waking up, what really got me interested in it was that you could get access to the full app even if you couldn't afford it. So like I couldn't afford the Headspace app anymore. So then I was like, okay, I'll use Waking Up, and then you can apply for like a scholarship, and they give it to anybody who can't afford it. And that app for like the next like 5 to 6 months was like such played such a big role in my life. And it was beautiful because there was so many incredible teachers on the app, so much like great guided meditation. But what I loved about it, and I share this with people often and I reflect back on it myself, is how the focus of the app wasn't just like calming, using meditation to like calm the nervous system, and it wasn't just focused on health and well-being. It was like focused on these deeper kind of inquiries that you could do to really like go down this like spiritual awakening path, to experience this more like non-dual, non-separate way of living. And that's what really kind of intrigued me, and then this sent me down this whole kind of deeper path. So like the Waking Up app, I can definitely look back, it was like, yeah, Sam Harris, and then all these other teachers on the app. I remember I found so many great teachers through that app as well, like Ajay Shanti, I don't know if you've heard of him. And then a couple of others where they're just like really, their stuff really resonated with me. And then from there, I wanted to just go down this path, because also I was like so sick I couldn't do anything else really. So I was just like, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna meditate all the time. I was like living on my own in this apartment in Cape Town, and like there was periods where I was like so fighting against my
I
situation
think
where
I
it's like
felt your energy from the other side of the mountain, bro.
bro, I was just sitting there meditating. And yeah, I used to like
We need to track the dates and like what happened in the world that day, bro. My
right,
dream
yeah.
job is meditating on a mountain and just sending good vibes.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny how like I realized I was in the perfect space for that, because I'd been fighting with it for ages, where I was like, you know, before I was sick, I could go out and socialize with people, I could go out and exercise, I could go out and do that. And then like I could see all these patterns playing out in my mind. But then as I got more and more interested in meditation, I was like, this is basically like being in a cave. Like, let me just freaking meditate. And yeah, then I went on some retreats and stuff as well. But I'm curious to hear what was your experience with the Waking Up app?
Yeah, I also got the scholarship, um, once or twice. but I feel like I mostly use those daily reflections. I haven't
Okay,
really
yeah.
dived as deep into the teachers as much as you have, but I think you're inspiring me to do more of that. Yeah, I
I'd
definitely can
highly recommend it.
recommend.
There's so much good stuff on there.
I
Yeah,
can recommend it to everyone, and we're definitely gonna put a link in the description. I think even like if I send it with someone, they get like a free month or something. And yeah,
yeah, yeah,
guys, if you can't afford it, you can always reach out. They're super reasonable through email. And I mean, yeah, that's a real legacy this guy Sam Harris is having. And I'm curious to how do
yeah.
people like him inspire you, and what do you want your vision to be, or like what is your vision, and how has your vision shifted with your mentors, and yeah, what have you learned from your different
Mm,
mentors? And it's I think it's also
yeah, that.
we have mentors for different things. You know, we're not going to learn
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
from
it's
one
true.
person.
Yeah, exactly. And I've definitely found for myself that there's been like mentors for certain periods as well. Whereas like this mentor for like a certain number of months was like the main. And I think this is how I've approached like my journey has gone. Where I'll really dive deep into something. So I remember when I was using the Waking Up app, I think I listened to like every single thing there was on that app. Uh, every meditation, every conversation, I just completely absorbed by it. But then it came to a point when that wasn't resonating as much. But I love everything that it gave me. But then it was like time for a new mentor, basically. And that was then this guy that I was talking a little bit about earlier, Angelo Tolulo. He was like the like Sam Harris kind of introduced me to all of this stuff, and then I found Angelo, and his stuff was just like, bam, this was the dude I needed to kind of hear at the time. And then he's been very influential in my kind of path. In I learned a lot just from how to truly engage with other people and be a good mentor from him. Like just from like I would join some of his like he would do like live Q&As with people, and he did all these YouTube videos, and he's one of the most like people just openly willing to help people on their spiritual path, and just kind of completely zero ego at all. Like it's so clear in that guy that there's no sense of self or ego left. And just to see, I can just reflect in myself how much I subconsciously picked up from him. So when I started making YouTube videos and I started coaching and working one on one with people, there was so much like in the back of my mind that was guiding me on how to interact with people from what I'd picked up from this guy. Um, it's interesting to talk about it now because I often don't realize how much of that kind of was going on. But like, I remember when I started working with people one on one doing coaching, like one of my main uh, bases for the work I was doing with people was to hold a space and meet somebody where they're at. And that's something I really learned from Angelo, this mentor, was to not try to like project everything I know onto somebody, or like, you know, this is where you should be at. It was just like, what is this person dealing with in this moment, and how can I like meet them where they're at? I learned that from Ajashanti as well, this other guy. But like I've yeah, that became like a big foundation for me on like how to work with people. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious, like, how did you get into coaching, and what's your journey of that? And it sounds like you've learned a lot about coaching almost through being coached and kind of seeing
Yeah, yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's a good question. So the coaching started so basically the way my journey went was like from 20 the end of 2020 till the end of 2022 was like my 2 years of kind of similar to your like whole weight journey. Was like I could see it as the first year was like going completely downhill with my health until I was like in this very small space where I couldn't do anything, and then the next year was recovering out of that. And then at the beginning of 2023, I decided I want to start sharing. I wanted to for a long time to like sharing the stuff that had worked for me, because there's a lot of people talking about the stuff online and there's a lot of negative stuff. And then eventually I was like, okay, maybe it's time to start making YouTube videos. And again, go back to this mentor, Angelo, he was like the dude that kind of was like, yeah, I think you should do that. And then that's how the coaching started. So I was just making these videos of like, this is what I went through. These are the things that helped. And then I don't know, after I'd made a couple of videos, people were like, wow, this is really helpful. Do you, would you work with me one on one, or would you start doing the coaching? So it was cool how that just came about very organically. Like I didn't have to like force it or whatever. I was like, and that's kind of been my guide ever since, was just to kind of like see where's life pushing me and just be open to that, as opposed to like, oh, I have to rigidly make things happen or force life in a certain direction. So when I got those kind of inquiries, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to start doing coaching. And then uh, that in itself has been a beautiful journey of learning from every single person that I've worked with. So I've met so many like different people from all around the world. And what's been interesting is every person is in a very different space. You know, for some people, they were like in a very depressed, stuck space with their illness. And then in that space, it was really just kind of like feeling into what are they feeling, you know, what are like kind of almost holding a space for all of the difficult emotions that needed to be released. And the other people are looking more for like questions and like techniques and tools. But each one has kind of taught me more about like holding space for somebody else and kind of yeah, it's been an incredible journey. I've been doing it for like 2 years now, since then, almost, I think. And yeah, I can just see so much like, and it's interesting what you said about learning about the coaching. It wasn't, yeah, from like any specific coaching courses or anything like that. It was one from the mentors that had helped me, but then two, one of the big ways that I like recovered from all of this was taking on like a form of self-coaching. So I really learned to kind of become like my own coach. And then I guess when I started working with other people, it was just about like kind of sharing always from my direct experience. So I was like, okay, this is, and it became more and more intuitive. That's been the cool thing to see as well. It's like somebody would be sharing something with me, and then I could just feel like an intuition to be like, oh, this is what's coming up in my like consciousness right now. I don't know if this is helpful or not. And 90% of the time they're like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And I'm just like, cool, it just popped up. You know, it's like very intuitive nowadays. Yeah.
So would you say there's also like a part of not giving yourself too much credit? Like with then you say that right thing, are they gonna be like in awe of you? And I mean, I guess that's how like
Mm,
I don't know. We must be mindful of that. Like you look at those like yoga cults and like I don't know. I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
suppose yeah.
yeah.
What's your like? How much uh, credit do you take? And like, what is that separation of like you're saying? Like, is it coming from you, or are you literally reflecting them, or are you like
Mm.
channeling, or is it like a combination? It's like a
I think
meditation.
it's I think it's probably like a mix of different factors. Yeah. And I think, you know, for me that's where um like it came to me when I was like more in a space where I think I was ready to kind of just hold that space for somebody else and then reflect back whatever's coming through me. So I think for like people, like if you look at the, I think a certain level of awareness is required, which was key for me because I could see like thoughts of ego often creeping in, or like the YouTube was always a good reflection of this. Was like sometimes you get beautiful comments where people are like, "Oh my gosh, this is so amazing," and then seeing like that's a little bit of like a hit, and then people hating it, and it's like all of that was great just to see everything that it triggers in you, you know. And it's like that's a humbling journey in itself, and I always feel like, um, I think for me, just kind of there's been stages in my life where I've been humbled by life, you know, and then it's uh, I'm just yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I
I think
think
the more mirrors we can have, the faster we can awaken.
yes, and that's the thing for me actually with the coaching that was nice is I was always learning something from each experience myself. So I often found the coaching actually more in that in another direction of like it was kind of helping me to strip away layers of myself as I kind of because I guess the way I would always show up for a coaching session is completely uh, like empty of any like theory that I'm going to dump onto anybody or anything. It was just like, what do you want, and then seeing what came out of the session. So it was always very much just like an open space, and then a like let's see where it goes. You know, so I think that's probably what helped to not make it about me at all. And then sometimes somebody would have all these questions and be like this and that. But it's interesting, like all the stuff that had kind of dissolved. Um, so I'm getting some messages here with like my own ego deaths and stuff before that. It often made the um, like somebody would give like a lot of compliments and all of that, and it was just like it almost had nowhere to land in a sense of somebody like they'd want to talk about like, oh yeah, this is so great, and it's like a real appreciation for that person's kindness. Like that's how it feels nowadays. Like, oh wow, when somebody's being really kind, that's so beautiful. But there's nothing that's like, you know, yeah, like I want to hold on to that or something like that. I guess, yeah,
Yeah, I once did a 10-day Vipassana course, and I seem to bring this up a lot, but it seems to apply to a lot. But one of like the main lessons about that is like, do not crave and do not avoid. You know,
yeah,
things
yeah,
come and things go. The more we hold on to something, the more it turns to dust. And I
yeah.
think that's kind of what you were saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of for me, it was like this like with desire and aversion and that kind of thing. I think like to see it all play out is so different to being in it. Where it's like okay, I can see where a craving pattern might arise, and then it's kind of like feeling into that, and that's where I think like things like Vipassana meditation or these other kinds of meditation open up the space more and more, where you can kind of see the desire and the aversion play out, and then it's like exposing yourself. This is like what the YouTube and all of that is so great for, is you can see all the things that would trigger like the desire and the aversion and all of that. Um, yeah, which is like I love the mix between like integration and disintegration, like a retreat to kind of really like retreat from the world, and then like an exposing yourself to the world for now all your patterns to kind of come out in like the dynamic situations of other people and all of that.
Yeah,
When
and I
when did you
think it's yeah. So you go for it.
when did you do your Vipassana retreat?
I want to say like a year ago at this point, maybe longer. It was a winter. It was cold. There was snow in the mountain.
Yeah, so 2023.
I can't remember right now. Maybe 2022, 2023.
Okay, okay, yeah. Yeah, I did last year, May 2023. So it was just before winter, but it was pretty darn cold as well. Like,
Yeah, what was
yeah,
your
a little,
experience, bro? Yours is a bit more recent. Sometimes I think I've blocked
yeah,
that period out. I don't know, like, so it's hard to like talk about.
yeah, yeah. I loved it. It was interesting because it came at a time when I'd done a lot of meditation and it had a lot of kind of shifts through it already. So like I'd spent periods where I was just meditating like 3 or 4 hours on my own in my apartment and reading books about like deep meditation and kind of going deeper and deeper with that. And then I'd done some retreats. I'd done an online retreat with this guy Angelo, and yeah, so I had a bit, and then I went, and then I wanted to go do Vipassana just because it was like an accessible retreat nearby. Um, so I wasn't too like I didn't want to go there to learn meditation. I just wanted a space where I could sit and meditate, basically. But I loved the teaching. I found it very compatible with what I was doing already. Like I was exactly what I was looking for. Because actually, that at that time, it was just after I'd kind of healed, so my drive to meditate wasn't so strong anymore. I was just kind of exercising again. I was socializing again. I was like this whole new world where I was like, oh, I can do things again. But then I did notice I was starting to distract myself more again. I was like starting to like watch TV more and just do distracting behaviors. And I found it difficult to kind of, I didn't have the same drive to sit and meditate 3 hours a day on my own anymore. So that was one of the inspirations for the Vipassana was like, okay, I want to go sit in a place where for 10 days, all I can do is meditate. And, and that course, I loved it because it was exactly what I needed to be doing at that time, which was really about just feeling into body sensations, where I was like, what's uncomfortable in the body? And that's like the Vipassana body scanning technique is all about just kind of with equanimity, scan the body, and then like working on reactivity and equanimity, which was cool because it was what I was actually looking at doing on my spiritual path at that time. In any case, was like, okay, why am I like being triggered by things? And it all comes down to the sensations in the body. So yeah, I loved it. And also to go back to what you said a little bit earlier on, that group meditation effect is something that I love so much. It's like when you're in a space with other people, like whether it's breath work or meditation, there's this real kind of palpable uh, effect of like everybody meditating together. Like I love it.
Yeah, how did you get into? meditating 3+ hours. Like, yeah, bro, maybe you should be my meditation coach. Like, what?
Well, that was kind of what I was saying, where I found myself unable to do anything else, and I was meditating, and it was making me uh, feel healthier. It was helping with my mental and my physical health, and then at the same time, it was I became completely sucked into like the depth of it as well, where I was like so curious because I dropped out of university and I had like all this time where I was like on my own because I was sick. I was just following my intellectual interests, which became very big, like universal existential questions. So I was like reading books on philosophy and physics and like wanting to get to the roots of existence, and that's all came to like dead ends with books. So it was just like it's book upon book upon book with like philosophy, and then um, this was like the more I listen to people like Sam Harris have conversations with other like deeply awakened people, I could hear they were talking about like this perspective on the universe and life, like this non-dual experience of not having a separate self and this like interconnected experience. And I was like, that's what I'm looking for. It's not intellectual anymore. I'm looking for this experiential shift. And then it kind of all just came together where it was like meditation was the only thing that was helping my symptoms. I couldn't do anything else in my life. And I had this burning desire for like truth. Like I need to kind of break free from my mind and understand like what this is all fucking about. And then that all together, yeah, that's when I started meditating like 3 hours a day. I was just like, well, what else am I going to do with my time? And it was like, yeah, it was a beautiful period in my life. I often think back to it as I've gotten busier. It's always been like a reminder of like how powerful that was. Um, yeah, it was. It's so much changed in that time. It was like incredible.
Bro, I can see the change, bro. I can see the shine, bro. You got the smile, bro. You've earned the
Yeah.
smile, bro.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, what a journey, dude. What a journey,
Yeah.
bro. And yeah, I was thinking back to my life. Maybe I haven't done too many like long extended meditations as maybe like Vipassana. I think I shocked myself with Vipassana, like without
Yeah.
you had done long meditations before,
That's
right?
the
So
thing.
that
It's a
makes it
very
easier.
intense. It's true. Like I met other people that they were coming there to learn meditation, and I was like, that's probably quite intense. Like I was quite comfortable with it because I was like, I'm quite comfortable with sitting in silence for long periods of time. But it's hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah, what are your favorite different meditation techniques, and like how did you learn different ones, and how do you differentiate the ones? And so you came to Vipassana like
Mm.
and you did your own techniques or you did theirs as well, or
It was a little bit of a mix, honestly, because what started to happen for me later on with meditation, and this is what a lot of the people I was listening to would talk about as well, is it started from like a very effort based place of like, this is what I was doing when I was meditating a lot on my own, was uh, like focusing on the sensations of breath, basically, and then going deeper and deeper and deeper into that. So kind of like what you do on the first 3 days of Vipassana. It's just like the uh, building concentration basically. But I was mixing that when I was meditating on my own. I was mixing that with these more non-dual open awareness practices. So there's a lot of this nice stuff on Sam Harris's app that I was kind of getting introduced to. Was there's like this more like what happens if you kind of release any uh, control on your attention and then there's like with certain inquiries as well. They would mix into that like, you know, can you find the one who is uh, having this experience of meditating? Can you like sit and let go of the person that feels like they're meditating? So that was like kind of the two different techniques. It was like one was like more focused and the others are like this more effortless meditation. And then what started to happen as I meditated more and more is it just started to become a more and more natural, uh, intuitive practice of just sitting and then just kind of like letting go of any need to control experience. And sometimes I would find my attention, like if I could feel my mind was like very busy, then I would like focus on the sensations of breathing for a bit and then just kind of open up to like the rest of experience. Because this is the interesting thing to explore as well is this like the kind of focus point of the mind, but then there's like this peripheral kind of background awareness that's there all the time, but it's just kind of completely forgotten about when we're like so caught up in the thoughts. So when I was on the Vipassana, I think I was mixing um, the body scanning technique, but like sometimes this was what's nice about Angelo Tolulo's stuff is he's probably for me one of the best teachers on how to deal with thoughts, because I think this is one of the things that people struggle with the most with meditation is like thoughts and fighting with thoughts and getting caught up in thoughts. I used to struggle with that a lot. And then I would kind of shift to his techniques if I was like doing the Vipassana and then I could just feel like my mind was like too busy. Then I would just kind of let the thoughts run wild, kind of let go of like any kind of effort. And that for me is always the like, just kind of let a thought storm pass through. If the mind wants to make a lot of noise, don't react to every single thought that comes through. Um, and definitely nowadays it's just like it's cool, like with all these different kind of techniques that I've learned and used along the way, I can just feel if I'm sitting and meditating for an hour at home, just the right approach will like naturally come in to deal with what's going on in experience.
It's all about developing that taste, finding what works, and I think it's really understanding our cravings, Like, what are we
Mm,
craving for? What is our body needing in this moment?
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
exactly. It's like I think specifically for meditation, like with the coaching stuff, I recommend for people like finding what works, like what technique works the best for them. Because some people just sit and they hate meditation, and then maybe for them it's more of like a bodily movement practice that's going to kind of help to calm the mind a bit more, something like that. So because this is I think what our minds can also do is they'll listen to specifically like a very intellectual mind. It's like it wants to find the exact right technique. It's like what's the best technique, but is what is the best technique for one person might just not be the best technique for you. And the only way I think you can find out is by experimenting and seeing what works.
life sure is one long experiment.
Yeah, exactly.
What's
Yeah,
the
I recently read it.
journey? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, yeah. I was just wanted speaking on experiment. Recently read this book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, and it's the dude literally like had this big awakening just after university, and then completely gave up. Like his whole life just became a surrender experiment, where he was like, "What happens if I just completely he just wanted to live and meditate in the woods, and then but anytime life gave him something to do, he just completely surrendered to it. And I think it's so cool. Like life is an experiment, exactly like you said, where it's just like it doesn't have to be this fixed controlled thing. Experiment and see like where does it go? Where does it take you if you just kind of stop resisting?
Facts. Yeah, what's your journey been with that?
Yeah, that's why I love this book, because it was like this is how I started to live after like some of the shifts that happened to me when I was meditating so much. Like I distinctly remember one day where I was just like had this big shift where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't need to control anything. And then since then, there's been like fluctuations. I think this was more the integration stuff, but there's been a part of me that's never come back, which was like the one that felt like it was in control of its life. Um, and that's yeah, I mean that's why I love this book, because it was an inspirational reminder of like how deeply you can live in trust and surrender. And I've found it from my own experience that things work out when you do that. I've noticed it when I was like the first time I was traveling Europe, which was last year. I went there with absolutely no plans. So like I met up, I met up with I had a 3 month visa, and I had 10 days with a friend in Croatia who was working on yachts in Croatia. So I went and stayed with him for 10 days. And literally on the 10th day, like my family was like, what are you doing next? And like the guy I was staying with, what are you doing next? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, and then the next day I saw there was a Vipassana meditation retreat in Slovenia. And yeah, because I'd done this one in May in South Africa, I was like, let's go and work there. So I went and volunteered to work at the retreat in Slovenia. And then like my whole traveling was like that. And then I just meet somebody there. And then at the end of the Vipassana, like the people I was working with, like, where are you going next? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. And then like on the 10th day, when everybody could talk again, like I met somebody who was just like, oh, you can come stay with me. So it's cool. It was like just life provides you with like the right people at the right time when you really just kind of surrender and trust. Yeah.
100%, bro. How can we all surrender more?
Yeah. That's
Wow. And increase our capacity for surrendering and our capacity for empathy.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I would say for me, like it comes down to noticing resistance. Like this has always been a huge part for me was like resistance and surrender. I think you could look at them as kind of opposites. Where is life? Are you fighting with life basically? And it becomes kind of obvious in your experience when that's happening. And this one for me is like noticing when I would feel like, oh, things are happening to me, or just allowing whatever is happening to be an opportunity for life to either like show you something, open you up to something, or like strip something away from you. Because this is what often happens. That's what we resist the most. Is like something will come and it's here to strip away like an old version of ourselves or like an old ego pattern that's not serving us. And it's very uncomfortable at the time when it feels like, you know, everything's going to shit or like it's chaos or whatever. And if you look at it on the other side, it's always like, oh, by just surrendering to that, like this is what's meant to be happening right now. What can I learn from this? Things worked out, you know. So I think it just comes from recognizing resistance. Like, am I resisting? What am I resisting? How can I not resist? This was like before. Like I never used to use the word surrender so much myself. It was just like, can I live in a state of constant non-resistance, basically? And it's like that's the experiment, I guess, for me. And then it was seeing there was times when that was like very flowy, and then there was times when it's like, oh, now all the resistance patterns are getting triggered, you know, because I'm in like a challenging state. And I think also for people to realize that resistance itself needs to kind of be seen and like and let go of. So when we're going through periods where we feel a lot of resistance, it's not like you're doing something wrong, but it's just like don't actively resist more. You know, just allow the resistance to come and go. Yeah.
Yeah, that is quite meta, quite hard to differentiate the two sometimes.
Yeah, and that's for me why meditation has been so key, because if I'm not meditating a lot, you're just so caught up in whatever is arising in your experience. But for me,
Mm.
like the clarification always happened when I was just sitting in stillness on my own and I could notice the different components of my experience. Where I could sit there and like a really triggering memory or emotion could be coming up of like something that had happened to me, or like being upset with my current state. Like, oh no, now I'm sick again. And then by sitting with that for long enough, I'd be like, and there's the resistance. The resistance is the thing that's saying, and how do I get rid of it? How do I meditate this away? And then it's like, oh, that's resistance itself. What if I just allow that to be there? Like the part of me that's like, no, I don't want to be experiencing this right now. So for me, allowance was like a big part of it as well. It's like, can I just allow everything in experience to be what it is? But I do think, like you said, the identifying resistance and letting go of resistance in everyday life is we get caught up in it very easily if you don't have like a space to kind of develop your awareness and like become more aware of what's actually happening in your experience.
Yeah, what is your daily practice? And I'm sure maybe it has evolved, and maybe what's the important
Yeah.
consistency? And what's the I recently actually asked this question to like quite a famous rapper, and I asked him like, what's the importance of consistency, but also like following intuition, like creativity, but
Yeah.
also like consistency.
That's a good question because I think it does become a mix of those two. I would say for me, like consistency was very important early on in my meditation journey. So, like, I noticed the biggest changes in my life once I really committed to, like, this is the most important thing in my life. I'm going to meditate at least like an hour and a half a day. And then that's when I started increasing it more and more. But that level of consistency was so key because it also compounds on itself, like anything else. Like if you go and like practice, I don't know, a sport every single day for 90 minutes, you're going to get better and better every day, which is what I started to notice with my meditation was each time I would sit to meditate, I would actually go into like a deeper state of meditation than when I was like doing it 20 minutes every second day. So that consistency, that really helped for it to become like a more transformational thing in my life. Then it was interesting. Since then, it's been more of a intuitive approach to it, and just kind of feeling like there's been periods in my life where there's not like a strict schedule anymore of like, okay, I have to meditate like 2 hours a day or something like that. There's just a feeling when there's a space in my life where meditation is what's being called for, because there's also periods where I just allow myself to kind of be busy and do things. So I guess I've experimented with it since then. I've experimented with a period where I meditated less. I guess where I'm at now is I still do think having some sort of consistent daily practice for me is very beneficial. So like I've noticed from the periods where I've meditated less and just allowed myself to be busy and travel and socialize and all of that, it's been fun, but I can always feel it build up, in my body, in my mind. I start to struggle unnecessarily with things. I'm like, why is everything so difficult again? Like all these problems. And then I'll meditate for a couple of days, like more. And then afterwards, I'll be like, wow, it's just thoughts. I was just kind of getting caught up in my mind. So yeah, I think like exactly how you said it, a mixture of consistency, but then eventually it becomes just like more intuitive of what you need. But I do feel like that can be a trap. It has been for me sometimes. Of like, oh, okay, I don't need any consistency. I'm just gonna like let it be completely intuitive, which was fine. I learned what I needed from it, but I can see like consistency is good as well. It just makes things easier.
100%, man. Consistency with what, I guess, is the, the important question.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's for like each individual to kind of clarify is like, okay, what is it that serves you most, because for me that's also been the experiment now with like a busier life than when I had nothing else going on in my life and I was just meditating. It was like, exercise is something that I play with as well, and there's periods of my life where I've exercised less, and it all just kind of, you don't need to be perfect all the time, but it's just like feeling in what do I need to introduce a little bit more of. I can feel there's times where I need to exercise a little bit less because I was just completely overdoing it, and then there's times when I'm like, oh shit, I need to make some more space for exercise or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, what's been the craziest exercise experiences in your life?
Mm, that's a good question. Um, well, that's what was funny with the whole long COVID chronic fatigue syndrome thing was like I was super busy guy before with exercise before that. So I was like gymming every day. I was playing hockey at university. I was getting into cycling and all of that. And that was one of the big like ego deaths, that identities falling away when I got sick, was like, who the heck is this Kyle guy if he's not the active exercising guy? Because exercise was one of the main things that was triggering all of my symptoms. And then it was like, yeah, one of the main things I cut out with all my healing. And that was like a big uh, aspect of myself that I was like, who am I now? And then it was on the other side, once I healed, then I really got into cycling again because it was something I'd missed. And then I kind of was doing like competitive cycling races. So that was interesting. I did that for a while. Uh, I love I love the Cape Town cycle tour. It's like I don't know if you know it, the August. Um, it's like all around the Table Mountain, and then yeah, nowadays exercise, like sometimes I just have this kind of energy that needs to be let out. It's like the other day I was in Germany and I just went and did like a 26K run. I was planning on doing like a 5K run, and then I was just like running and running, and then yeah, it was quite fun.
Yeah, I think it's very
What's
important to have numerous outlets for when we have that energy. I think so many people have
Yeah,
energy that's not
exactly.
getting used, and that's why people struggle with insomnia. But
Yes.
yeah, it's a privilege to get to the end of the day and feel tired.
Yeah, that's a good point with exercise and insomnia. That's because that's something I've often struggled with, is insomnia, and it's been an interesting relationship for me. If I overdo it with exercise for the day, I could also get insomnia from like having a completely overworked nervous system for the day. But if I also have periods where like yesterday, I'd been like meditating for quite a while, and then I was just going for like walks and stuff. Could feel the body was like too active when I wanted to go to bed. So it's such a strong correlation for me as well. Was like the right amount of exercise is can be really good, and it's just finding that with yourself. Like I kind of started to notice when I was like, oh, okay, yeah, the amount of exercise I'm doing now is actually not benefiting my overall health. It's like too much. But then also not at all is like not the right way either. What's your
Facts.
relationship with exercise?
Yeah, it's been even trippier, I guess, with a correlation to the weight loss journey.
Yeah,
To help
yeah.
lose the weight, it's definitely like a lot of like long runs.
Okay.
Um, Definitely got into like trail running, hiking. That's even been quite a spiritual journey. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Any specific question, or is that answer?
What do you do now? Or like what do you enjoy doing the most now? Is it still trail running
Yeah,
and
I've been
hiking?
getting quite a bit into yoga, especially hot
Okay,
yoga.
nice.
Um, I've been doing jujitsu less. Jujitsu has also been something I've done quite a lot. But yeah, I'm taking. It's sometimes just hard to get myself to go, bro. Jiu-jitsu is it's a proper show up, bro. You showing up 100%, bro. You
Oh,
can't be
really?
half-assed. But then there's also a part of me that's like, it's so important to show up half-assed too, because it's like, it's also self-defense. So it's like, in the real
Mm.
world, you might get like jumped when you're feeling tired, or maybe you're drunk, or maybe
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
whatever the case might be. But it's like if you're only practicing when you're 100%. I mean, it's even like
Yeah.
meditation. If you only meditate when you feel like it, you probably won't
Yeah.
meditate enough to improve.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point. That I think for anything to like build some consistency or actually make some progress in it, it's like showing up regardless of how you're feeling. Because it was the same, yeah, for me with like meditation, where uh or for me the perspective was often like, oh, this is a good meditation and this is a bad meditation based on like what was happening in the mind. But it was like when I came to the space of like just showing up to meditate, and regardless of what actually happens, whether it feels like a 50% meditation or 100% meditation, each one is just as like important as the other one. You know, I assume it's probably the same. Like just showing up even when you're feeling. I think often it's even more important like showing up when you're feeling 50% than when you're feeling 100%. You know.
100%, bro. And then I'm sometimes like, why? Like, why do we not want to show up? What
Yeah,
are
yeah,
what are we afraid of? Our greatest fear is
yeah,
not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are more powerful than we can imagine. Something like that.
yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Anything you feel like I didn't ask about?
No, I think we covered a lot. I think that you asked some really good questions. That
Yeah, I think I got
yeah,
one good last question. This one's
cool.
actually with the help of ChatGPT, so let's see if ChatGPT cooks. As someone who has navigated through depressive episodes, I don't know if you've like gone through depressive episodes, but
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
and is well versed in meditation, how do you suggest reshifting priorities during times of disruption, like during a full moon lunar eclipse, given the powerful energy these events hold in influencing our life's purpose and destiny? How do you find the balance between following your true desires and the sense of obligation to what seems right by societal standards? Additionally, could you share your thoughts on the importance of mentors? Okay, we already did that. And how can one
mm,
effectively read vibes and attract the right guidance on their journey?
cool. That's a lot. I like the question about the lunar eclipse because that's today. Yeah, so um, I'd say like the stuff about like how to navigate disruption and priorities and that kind of stuff. Like yeah, trusting your for me this whole journey always comes back to trusting yourself more and more, because that's kind of what we like are afraid of, is trusting ourselves even if it goes against what society is saying or what's normal. You know, this was like when I was meditating on my own so much, I had finally let go of all these like societal conditionings of, oh, I need to be seeing this amount of people frequently because socializing is good. I think it is good, but it was just like realizing that I couldn't do that at that time. So for an example of like a lunar eclipse, or that's just one example when like the energies in your life are more intense, right? When things are getting disrupted, things are kind of getting triggered. Uh, I would say just trusting. I do this a lot nowadays. Just trusting in yourself. What do I need, and what do I know from like a more wise version of yourself, right? Because my mind could sometimes say like, what do I need? And it's like, oh, I just need to distract myself and like watch some like mind numbing something. And then it's like, okay, that's
Netflix
what
and
like
chill. How normalized
yeah.
is that in our society?
Yeah, exactly. And like whatever, it's cool to let yourself do these guilty things sometimes. But like for me it's like feeling
But
into
let's not
myself
have
when
the guilty part. That's what I say.
yeah, exactly. Do it guilt free, just do it. But like for me it's like, yeah, a part of me always knows like what's the best thing for me. It's just like whether we actually want to listen to that. So when things are feeling more intense, it would just be for me a call to slow down, or just slow down, just take some stuff off your plate. Like I just stop going to the gym for a while and go for a walk and sit in nature. I'll just go sit on the beach and just kind of soak in that, and then I'll have like a bath in the evening and just soak in that. So combining, I would say, disconnecting with technology. So like, okay, let me actually just, because that's a whole portal in its own, where specifically when challenging stuff is coming up, just like scrolling mindlessly on whatever is always such a distraction for me. So it's like, let me go somewhere. I'll go outside and sit on the beach and leave my phone at home, and then I'll go for a bath and leave my phone for like 2 hours and just like and meditate and all these kind of things. So I would say cutting out distractions that are draining you, and then prioritizing things that are rejuvenating or that feel yeah. And specifically for me with trusting yourself is stop like being afraid of the feeling, or like you have to work through the feeling of guilt. Like I like that came up, because that's often for me, it's like I do something out of guilt. Like I have to go and show myself up for this other person. I have to go and present, like, do this and do that, because I was afraid of the feeling of guilt. But like it's like an interesting balance, because sometimes this can sound like, oh, okay, just become like a very selfish person. But for me it's quite the opposite. It's like when I was just completely doing everything for other people, is like I was so drained and not able to help anybody, because you're not being yourself. So it's like, kind of really trust yourself without guilt, do like what feels right for you, and then from that space you can actually help people more than ever before. Because for me, one of this ties in nicely with the mentorship stuff. There's another guy that's been like a great mentor for me, mentor and a friend. His name's Matt Garrett, and he would often talk about how somebody being their most authentic kind of like putting themselves first, but like in a compassionate way, is such an invitation slip for other people to do the same thing. And I found this so true. Like the more I hung out with this guy who wasn't afraid to kind of uh, really trust his kind of deepest promptings. Trust like uh, this is how I want to express, even if it's going to ruffle some feathers. It allowed me to be like, oh, it's okay to trust yourself more and more. And that's often the thing that we're afraid of. Is like, don't trust yourself because it's going to trigger other people. And this is like to go back to what we were saying earlier about the ego stuff. Like I think ego can come in sometimes, but it's also the best way for it to get exposed, if that makes sense. Where like for me, living more this way, it would be like, oh, there's some ego patterns that wouldn't have come out if I was just playing it safe all the time, you know. Um, so there, I think that covers some of the different aspects of the question.
Yeah, I think we could talk for hours. But
there's,
I think a
there's always
good
some new
message to
stuff I
leave
want
it
to.
on is go out there, be the change you wish to
Yeah.
see. And life begins around that corner, peek behind that curtain. Life is a curtain that hides the divine. We can peek
Mm.
behind it when we quiet the mind. That's Mike Posner. Shout out to him. He has this really great
He,
song called Slow It Down. I often think of that
okay.
when life's going too crazy.
I love that guy. He's I remember a while ago when I came across like his like the new version of him. It was quite inspiring to see how this guy's like, oh, I remember some of his old songs, and then like seeing how like his kind of wholesome, authentic journey now. It's like, damn, that's really inspirational. Yeah.
Well, you're super inspirational as well, Kyle. Thanks so much for your time. And make sure to check out Kyle's YouTube channel. We'll also put that meditation app and subscribe to the podcast. Yeah. We just hit 20 subscribers on YouTube. It's so fun starting a new YouTube channel, man. Woo! 20
exciting.
subscribers,
Awesome.
bro.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me on, man. It's
Yeah, this was a blast, bro.
been
Hour 30.
great
Thanks
to
so much
chat.
for your
Yeah.
time, bro.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's keep in touch.